Yeah, you only take out one person at a time or whoever you want.
And
No
then
collateral damage.
do they kill that guy who says it's immoral and unethical? Are they going to kill George?
Oh, the dude that walked out?
Yeah.
Well, they did say he needs to be liquidated, so I'm guessing he's gone.
So I don't think people have ever learned from movies. So we recently did a podcast about an episode about the Phantom, where this mafia guy's like, I ain't doing this. This skulls and all this crap. He gets killed, right?
The Billy Zane Phantom.
Yeah, and then you have different characters. There's always characters who walk out and get murdered. If I was one of these people, I'd be like, yeah, this is great. Then I'd just run.
This is a good idea. I'm gonna grab a quick cup of coffee, and I'll be right back instead of voicing your opinion.
Does anyone need coffee? Because let's say they pick up that you have doubt, but you offer to buy everyone coffee. They're going to wait till you get back with that coffee to liquidate you. So you just walk out and put some nitrogen coins into a coffee maker, grab one for yourself, and then run.
What's really fun about that opening scene in the movie is, I guess really quick even before that, is like you're going through the opening credits with the like that old, I assume it's from like the 40s or 50s song, Take Advantage of You. And so then they're showing all these little vignettes of technology throughout time. And it's weapons throughout time, like starting with like, pickaxes and all that, going up to like the first firearms and like bombs. And then it continues all the way up to like what you assume is a diagram of like a laser or a blueprint of a laser. And then immediately goes into the crossbow promo, but you don't know that it's the promo that's going. So you just think this spaceship is just flying through space with a pilot, conducting all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, they vaporize the target and it ends, and then it goes into all these guys laughing in some, annex blacked out room somewhere deep in the Pentagon or something. And just the way that was even shot was really fun. And like the use of just black through all of it. I mean, it's a very dark scene contrasted with the dark humor that's involved. So I think that's just kind of, to me, that was always fun too, because it's almost like a throwback to like the old 50s movies, like the old noir films.
Yeah. And I mean, the song is appropriate. He did take advantage of them. And I like that Hathaway in this movie isn't even the boss. He's just a middleman. They're always yelling at him, then he's yelling back at him.
Yeah, he gets away with a lot in this movie. I think his house blowing up with popcorn is probably getting off easy, considering embezzling from the CIA to remodel his house.
Which I love about him, right?
It's pretty bold.
He makes Kent teach his classes. He sleeps with Julie, who has the greatest line in ever. What, can you hammer a nail into a 6-inch board? He's threatening raids. I think my favorite line in this movie, when I knew I loved it, is when he looks at these people and he goes, "You're laborers. Labor."
Yes.
I would love that.
Oh man.
And then what do you think about Chris Knight's entrance? He's wearing the shirt that says I love toxic waste. He talks about like, your satellites are raining everywhere. Like, tell me about Einstein. He's dead. Like, what do you think about his introduction?
His intro's fantastic because he's just this, you would think like 20-year-old kid showing up with the I Love Toxic shirt on, like the rabbit ears, or no, like the little alien, like bouncy ears. He's got slippers on, and he's going through asking he's going through being given a tour for a promotion to teach at the school, but he's not asking questions like you would think of, like, what's the salary going to be? Was there any like paid time off? What do we have time off? Leave, like all these actual professional questions. Instead, he's going through asking like, where's the break room? Is there a jacuzzi? and all this stuff. And so it's just great, but you can tell that he's like, intellectually, he's just a level above everybody else, and they don't get it, and he does. He's the only one that knows that he is truly that smart and he can get away with doing that stuff, but he does it in such a charming way that it's not malicious or arrogant.
How could you deal with Chris Knight if you think about it? Like, how do you deal with this guy? Does that make sense? So he's incredibly smart, very sarcastic, and a pain in the butt. You're obviously not as smart. Do you just let him do his thing? You just kind of put it like, he says things, you're like, yeah, Chris, you're a genius. Like, how would you deal with this guy if you were his employer?
Obviously not the way Professor Jerry Hathaway dealt with it.
That's right. Now, I love Kilmer's 80s run between 84 and 86. So 84, he was in Top Secret as Nick Rivers, skeet shooting. Have you seen that movie?
I have seen that, yeah.
I love the opening credits where they're skeet shooting. He's this musician who goes undercover into the Nazis to do all this. And then he goes
Oh, that's right.
Then he's the real genius. 1 year later, though, he's Iceman. So he goes from
He's in Top Gun.
little Chris Knight to Top Gun. A year. I feel like he aged 7 years between that, and just the way he looks.
Age 7 years and gained about 70 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, I mean that's quite the transformation right there, isn't it?
I think that's one of the biggest acting transformations in the history of acting.
Whenever I look at Val Kilmer's filmography, I kind of realize that he hasn't done that many movies. So, he had Top Gun, he did a couple TV movies, then he did Willow. Then his next couple big movies were, he was in Kill Me Again, but he did Doors and Thunderheart. He had a minor part in True Romance. Then he was awesome in Tombstone. Batman Forever. Oh, dude, he was so good in Heat. Then then he did Island of Dr. Moreau, Ghost in the Darkness, The Saint. Those weren't too big. And then he just sort of ended up in movies like Pollock, Red Planet, Salton Sea. He kind of, I wouldn't say he ever fell off, but it's kind of weird Kiss Kiss Bang Bang should have brought him a lot more. But it's kind of weird to see his career trajectory go kind of up and down so quick. I know people said he was dangerous on set, not dangerous. He was a pain in the butt on set, but I don't know, man. I'd love to have seen more of him during these years.
And I would have thought, I was really excited back in the mid 2000s when it was announced that he was going to be in Deja Vu, which would have reunited him with Tony Scott from Top Gun days. But, he just kind of had a minor role in that as well.
Yeah, do you think people just gave him minor roles to get him some money? Or do you think people knew, because I guess on Batman Forever he was a nightmare. Maybe that would have soured him. He was looked at for other movies, but people are like, or The Phantom and movies like that, but nah, he's a pain in the butt. We're not dealing with him.
I mean, that certainly could be part of the reason.
Yeah, but I don't know. His top 5, if you put those up against most people, like Tombstone. Has there been a supporting character that's been I'm not going to say he's the most iconic, but has there ever been a supporting character in a movie that's been near the level? Obviously there has, but his supporting turn in Tombstone was amazing.
There's that directly comes to mind. There's very little actual supporting characters. I mean, his run of Doc Holliday is more, it almost overshadows, arguably it does overshadows Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp.
Oh, for sure.
It's that big. It defines the movie. And I think that's almost kind of the thing with Real Genius as well, is that his takes on both those characters of Doc Holliday and Chris Knight, it's like those movies would not be what they are without him doing it the way he did it.
Yeah, I think what he nailed in...
It's like, at that point, I can't see anybody else in any of those roles.
Because he nailed Chris Knight. I like that he's still young, though. So he's still quite naive in certain aspects, but he's also brilliant. So I kind of like that he gets fooled by this, just thinking about I like that one of the smartest people in the world gets straight up tricked by a jerky professor.
Yep.
I kind of dig that. I like that aspect of it. And I think it kind of helps the character because he's still a young kid. As smart as he is, he hasn't seen too much of the world.
Yeah, it's just his lines. I wish somewhere that there would just be some better behind the scenes about this movie. Because I would love to know how much of it was actually ad-libbed compared to written.
I've read some good interviews behind. There's a bunch of 30-year, 20-year articles, but there wasn't much. He doesn't talk much about his movies. I would love to hear him. You know what I mean? You don't really hear much about him, talking about his best behind the scenes roles. I'd love to learn more about Tombstone actually, because Kurt Russell took over directing from a guy, and Val Kilmer said that shouldn't have happened. It's pretty interesting, but no one really ever talks about it. What'd you think about? So in this, we'll get back to the movie. What'd you think about the liquid, the skating scene? Like the ice, and then the gas becomes volatile and just messes everybody up.
The smart people on ice?
Yeah, I love that.
I think it's fantastic. It's it's Chris taking on the role of entertainment master for the dorm.
Yeah, I think
it's he's the one that's trying to get these kids to loosen up a little bit. He realizes so many of them are going to have the Laszlo Holyfeld effect if there's not some sort of intervention. So he's always coming up with these different pranks and events to draw people in and getting them to loosen up a little bit. And that was one of them where was it Ick, the character Ick?
Yeah.
He figures out how to pretty much coat the floor in ice so they can just make a skating rink in the common area. And then it only has a 30-minute life expectancy before it vaporizes and turns into gas.
A potentially explosive volatile gas.
Yes. But sometimes you got to roll the dice with it.
That's right, and otherwise you'll become that. I love that scene in this movie where they're just studying, the kid just loses his mind, starts screaming, and runs away.
that reminds me, I never, like looking back growing up, I never really understood that scene that much. But like after going through and cramming for finals in college, like I completely get it. You just eventually have that point where you just, you're so close to cracking and you just want to quit and leave. And that's what happened. That kid just lost it, screamed, and he just screamed his head off outside the door. And then someone else just, stands up and fills in and sits down where he was at the break table, and then they continue studying.
Yeah, someone immediately went and took his chair.
It was just great, and it just reminds me I felt like that's how it always was at the library when I actually hit that point in my college career where I cared. So you just kind of wait for a seat to open up. When one opens up, you've got 10 people rushing to get in there to actually be able to sit down and do some work.
I remember when I was in grad school, you're studying all the time, but I was in there was a separate room for grad students, and so there's that many people in there, but it was dead silent, and then my stomach would always make noises. And then people would just look at me, and eventually I was like, just get over it, guys. Like, I just ate. My stomach's grumbling. But that was always embarrassing, sitting in a totally silent room, having my, stomach grumble. I don't know. I just wanted to tell you that story.
I think for the most part, this movie is fairly, no one listening to this probably ever went to a Caltech. So I'm sure that they did not work with lasers and the high sciences. But like depicting dorm life and college life, I think was kind of fairly accurate just for the everyday stuff. Not necessarily for like the pranks that these kids were playing on each other, but just actually depicting like how things are in class. It was pretty spot on.
Oh, I love the montages.
There's so many good montages.
Yeah, and
half the movie's a montage.
We're old, so I love when the montages with by "I'm Falling" by the Comstock Angels, and then Chaz Jankel had that song "Number One," which I love that song. But I love how you get the characters walking around with old notebooks. Like, I dig that. I love how Mitch is just walking around with massive notebooks and they're falling. And I love that the students showed up for one day of class and they started recording the class. And then the teacher recorded his lecture on a boombox. And then other students recorded that lecture on their boomboxes.
And by the end of it, everybody's just got a recording device in there.
But I guess that's what happened in Caltech, which... I love that though. Like, I think those are little elements that make these movies. And I think, do you think Real Genius is looked at as, all right, it was a hit, right? People really dug it. But when you look at the pantheon of 80s films, college, high school, you kind of think John Hughes, right? You think those kind of movies. So while Real Genius definitely has an audience, it's not a super, it's not reminiscent as one of the top movies of this kind of the 80s.
Of the top coming of age, high school, college movies. It's not, and it should be.
But I think the reason why is, there's no nudity, right? Martha Coolidge is like, I'm not dealing with that. Then she's like, I already had to do that on Valley Girl. There's no super they're so Ferris Bueller, he skips school and they're going out and about and they're causing kind of mayhem. Breakfast Club, it's 6 different people in a room. And so, but this movie I think goes about things really smart and under the radar almost in a way. Do you think that's why it's not one of the top thought of in the 1980s?
It could be. I mean, it deals with adversity in a different way than those other films did as well. I mean, some of the other movies are dealing with some pretty heavy-handed issues, like The Breakfast Club definitely does.
Suicide.
And it just kind of puts it in your face, and like St. Elmo's Fire and all that stuff.
And then there's virginity and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. In this, I think those aspects are there and you can feel it, but it's not, I wouldn't necessarily say suicide's involved with this movie by any means, but there are some heavy topics, but they deal with those topics in a different way. And they try to do it in a more lighthearted way as well. And I think that helps.
I like that when Chris Knight gets a job taken away from him because of the laser because of Kent, he just starts studying harder.
It's a moral imperative. He's got to get even.
That's the thing, though. He just starts studying. And I like that scene where those women walk by, and then Val Kilmer just is like, oh, he bites his knuckles.
You can't go after him. He's got to keep his nose to the grindstone.
That's funny. Hey, so let's take a break. When we come back, we will talk more Real Genius. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks. And there's a lot to talk about in this movie, but I really want to talk about the popcorn and the massive explosion and the fact that they built a house and then they had to keep seagulls from eating said popcorn. I mean, that's a great scene.
That's a fantastic scene. So near the end of the movie, they somehow are able to sneak onto the military base with